It's something we talk about in grief therapy, that when you lose a parent, you lose your past. And when you lose a partner, you lose your present. But if you lose a child, you lose your future. And just to put all of that in a package, I don't think anymore that we lose. And my son has made it very clear. Oh, and he's very humorous. He was very humorous in life, and he's humorous where he is now in this angelic realm. Like, oh no, Mom, our future is not gone. It's just a very different future. And on that night, I walked down to be near the ocean, and I looked up at the sky. Both my friend and me, we looked up at the sky, and there was this huge shooting star, and I could hear his voice, Mom, Mom. It's like we always talked about. I'm home. I'm with God. And as I said earlier, like, I would be able to stay in the light and stay, as you said, like in this higher vibrational frequency. I could meet him. So real. Smelled him, saw him, felt him, everything. And it was like, that was a visitation. And she said, no, you got your ticket, you've got your place, you know that you're supposed to go. And what she didn't tell me is that Dylan was present in the room, and he said to her, I'm going to give my mom an unmistakable sign. And so when I saw that, and everyone in the plane was taking pictures, because you saw this round rainbow and you saw the shadow of the plane inside it. But when I got out in Leh and I looked at the picture, it was Dylan's face. One day I'm sitting in the kitchen and he goes, Mom, you gotta call the bowl dudes. We're gonna do sound healing. And I'm like, and as I started playing, and you'll appreciate this, as I started playing the bowl, I felt this misty white presence in the room, so I could feel him and see his presence in the room. And then he guided me. I started playing that bowl, and it was...
Hi, this is Akanksshaa. If you're new here, please subscribe to my channel. If you resonate with me, please like, comment, and share. Welcome to Multidimensional Soul Podcast and a Talk Show. We have with us today Professor Jeralyn Glass, who's known for crystal cadence, sound healing, and today we're going to have a very interesting session. So a very warm welcome, Jeralyn, on Multidimensional Soul Talk Show and a podcast. It's an honor to have you here. Namaste.
It's truly an honor to be here. Namaste. Thank you for the invitation.
Can you talk a little bit about your journey, about especially after your son crossed over? How was it? How did you heal through the grief? And how has sound healing helped you? And how did you find your purpose through this?
That is a very big question to start with. Yes, I think as mothers, you know so well that we don't ever anticipate that.
Yes.
It's something we talk about in grief therapy, that when you lose a parent, you lose your past. And when you lose a partner, you lose your present. But if you lose a child, you lose your future. And just to put all of that in a package, I don't think anymore that we lose. And, my son has made it very clear. Oh, and he's very humorous. He was very humorous in life, and he's humorous where he is now in this angelic realm. Mom, you didn't lose anything. We've got this relationship that's happening, and it's so beautiful. It was not expected, and if you can imagine, as you sit in this grief of just like, not my child, not my life. And I've been a professional musician and singer since I'm 19. So, and my son loved music. So music was something that really bonded us together. We did all kinds of performances and things together. He was born in Germany, where I was living and working as an opera singer and a teacher. And I was running a children's foundation called Kids for Kids World Foundation, where we created original productions for children of all nationalities, and music was the universal language, right? So my son, this is him. He's a big boy. He was a big boy. He passed at 19. Dylan Sage, and uh, he encouraged me to start this kids foundation because at the time I thought I would stay living in Germany the rest of my life, and I felt like it's really important to be of service where you are. And it was something that I saw my parents do, whether my dad helped in the community or my mom hosted events or whatever it was, they really taught us that it's very important to be giving, and it's very important to be a light and a respected pillar of your community, that integrity matters and your actions really do matter. And so I brought my son up that way too. And living in Germany, we started this children's foundation, and every year we do original musical productions. And, I experienced like music is this universal language, and it doesn't matter if I speak German or French or Italian, or it doesn't matter if I pray to this God or that God, or it doesn't matter what's in my bank account. Music held us all together. And, my parents used to ask, like when I started singing opera, my dad would joke and he'd say, I'm singing La Notte di Figaro, which is the Marriage of Figaro, sung in Italian. Oh, he said I could understand every word you were saying. It's like, not dad, like really. But, it was, he was trying to tease and say like, he could feel the heart come through, right? And so I think music is really, it is the language of our hearts. And my son Dylan, he knew these crystal singing bowls. So I find that so interesting, is that I had heard them, was living in Germany at the time, and we came back to visit my parents, and I went on a little excursion with my mom, and we heard somebody give an example of the bowls, and it was like, Mom, I need to purchase some of these. Like, I can't explain it to you except for that. It was like when I heard the sound of the first bowl, it was like it awakened in me something that was so ancient. And you can appreciate this. I had always loved the Himalayan singing bowls. So as a singer, I had a set of 3 of them. And like when I traveled for singing performances, like I did a tour to Japan, I would take 2 of the bowls with me, and I'd just lay down and I'd put one on my belly and I'd play it, and I'd ah, ah, and I would just make sounds. I would do my warm-ups with the Himalayan singing bowls. I just loved this idea that it was this spiritual-like instrument that had so much tradition in it, and it could ground me, and at the same time it could open me to God or the light, because as a singer, especially, as a musician, but for me as a singer, I recognized early, I started studying when I was 11, and I had sung a solo in the choir at school in the 6th grade, and people were like, to my parents, like, well, what are you going to do? Like, she's talented. And at that time, there was none of these TV shows like The Voice or, America or Britain or whatever has Got Talent. There was none of those. And so she took me to a neighbor who was a singing teacher who had sung for Ava Gardner in the, I don't know if you know, in the MGM musical Showboat. She had sung for Lucille Ball. And I started with her when I was 11. And she taught me very practical principles that I use today about what it means to nah. So like you were saying that, we're going to talk about opening the throat chakra, and there's many ways to do that. But what she taught me was something that she learned from a Swedish doctor, Dr. Vadin, who was rehabilitating stroke victims who had lost their voices. And he taught them this kind of breath support, which at the time, people weren't really so aware of lateral breath support. So really moving the transverse abdominis muscles, internal, external oblique muscles, that this was giving you the most range and power of your voice. And so I learned this technique since I was really young. And she taught me that I am the instrument. And so as I progressed and started my career on Broadway at age 19, it was like, okay, so God, I need to really prime myself. I need to tune myself. So if I'm upset or frustrated or angry or triggered, I need to find ways to tune myself, because we know you can tune a piano and we know you can tune a guitar, but how do you tune this? And understanding that these two tiny vocal cords inside my throat area here could project sound, certainly as a classical singer, in 3,000 seat theaters without any amplification over a 100-piece orchestra. And it was like, this tiny body could do that in these tiny vocal cords. And so I think I grew up, and by the way, she's 102 today, and she still sings. Like, it's incredible. And so, like, this question of how do I tune myself and how do I keep myself as a vessel of light? How do I know that, whether I'm singing Mozart or whether I'm singing George Gershwin or whether I'm singing Verdi or whatever it is, Beethoven, I have to be this instrument that's so finely tuned that when the sound is actually coming out, it can touch people in a way like that nothing else can. And so growing up in that world and understanding that world, and my son knew that, because when I was pregnant with him, I was singing a series of the Ninth Symphony of Beethoven. Da da dee da dee da 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 dee da dum bum ba da dum. And so he heard that. He knew that melody. And when he was born, whenever he would cry, I'd put that CD on in my car, if we were driving or whatever, still as a mouse. He would just be still as a mouse. And that was kind of, for me, the first kind of example of music as a medicine. Like, I don't need to put a pacifier in him, or I don't need to, give him anything. It was like he heard Beethoven and he was quiet. And that was something that he knew from his mom's body and he knew from his mom's voice. So fast forward, when he was 7, I discovered the bowls. And it was like, wow, I need to bring these home to Germany. So I got 7, one for each chakra. And, at that point in time, I knew of the chakras, but I wasn't studied, and I knew that there was energy centers in the body, but I didn't know what I know now. But so I got one for each of the 7 chakras, and then I just started playing them for my family, for friends, for students. And it was so interesting. Like, if a voice student had a blockage, I'd ask them to choose one of the bowls. So I'm thinking of one young girl, she was 16 years old, and we were working to get in her higher range, and her voice was closed. And so I said to her, why don't you choose one of the bowls? So she chose, I'll show you, she chose a D note. Okay, so she chose this note. And the D note is the sacral chakra, right? And again, at this point in time, I'm not putting any of this together, but she chose the D note, and then I had her just, make sounds. Just makes sounds that felt comfortable to her while she was playing the bowl. And it wasn't about matching the bowl. It was just about, okay, let's see if the bowl can be your friend in this moment, and it can help you feel safe and open you up. So she started toning with the bowl, and of course her voice opened up. And then she started crying, and she remembered a trauma from childhood that had to do with abuse. And, I'm not a therapist, but in the process of opening her voice, she spoke into what she had never spoken into before. And the tears came, and I saw healing through sound in front of my eyes. And I was like, okay. And then my son, when he was 13, he was in a national German singing contest. And many of the kids from the Kids Foundation would enter this contest. And the year that he entered, she entered it too, the young woman. She ended up taking the overall second prize. So it was amazing for me to watch how this kind of work with using the bowls and regular voice technique opened her heart, her memories. We don't recognize that there's things that we've stuffed down that are still taking space in our body, and they're a kind of impediment of the energy, right? So her energy was flowing free. So flowing free. So the same thing happened to my son. He made it to the semifinals in this contest, and the area was musical theater. So he was singing like, It don't mean a thing if it ain't got that swing, from Duke Ellington, and some Rodgers and Hart, and a couple of original songs. And he had a wonderful program, and he made it to the semifinals. And a week before the semifinals, he goes, Mom, my voice. And his voice had started to drop. And at that point, as a professor, I had never guided a young man through a voice change. So I asked colleagues, and they were like, no, I mean, if he's comfortable and he feels safe and nothing's pushed, if you work with him like releasing the jaw and just staying deeply grounded inside himself, and he's comfortable to sing, he can sing. There's nothing that can happen. So we started to work with the bowls, and Dylan chose, okay, so as we go into the bowls are made of pure quartz, and the quartz gets infused with alchemies. So in this case, he chose a citrine bowl. In the case of the other young student, she chose an ocean indium alchemy bowl, which is a blue colored bowl, very good for the skeletal system. And citrine, of course, is very good for activating your personal power. I mean, it's a gem that I know you know and love. And so there he was toning with this little bowl, and it happened to be a G note. And the G note is affecting the throat chakra. But again, at that point in time, I wasn't thinking about chakras and notes. You know, it was my son and freedom and music. But that's what he chose. He chose a G note citrine, activating confidence, courage, personal power, self-esteem, and the throat chakra. He knew, you know, on some level, we really do know if we trust. So we practiced with that and had him do, you know, he'd take the little bowl and just making sounds that he was comfortable. And then he stood up to do his performance, and he said, my name is Dylan, and since 1 week, I'm no longer a soprano. And he made a joke, and everyone laughed. And I was like, I mean, this kid, like, he's at a point in his life that it's so vulnerable. He doesn't know if his voice is going to, what it's going to do, but he was humorous. He was grounded. He was in his core. And that experience, I think, anchored in both of us that there was something about these bowls that were really unique, besides being beautiful and besides the sounds being exquisite, you know. And so fast forward, you know, he was 19, so 6 years after that, and he passed. And on the night that he died, and I know you, it's just beautiful. I'm talking so much, and I know we'll get to talk together. But you asked me a very loaded question. It's a big question.
No, I would. I'm getting goosebumps actually as you're talking, because I can resonate with so much with whatever you shared so far. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. And so on the night he died, and you know as well as I, like, you can't fathom it. I got the phone call, and it was like, no, I think you have the wrong number. Been an accident? No, no. And yet, in that moment of shock and that moment of recognition and that moment of feeling that my life completely changed, I had to make a pivot in that moment that changed me forever, right? I mean, it's like what I said at the beginning, that's your child and there's your future and it's gone. And it's like, oh no, Mom, our future is not gone. It's just a very different future. And on that night, I walked down to be near the ocean. I didn't know what to do with myself, because how do you comfort yourself? What do you do? It's not expected. It's not when someone has a long illness, or it's not, and then a young person, it's not expected. And I looked up at the sky, both my friend and me, we looked up at the sky, and there was this huge shooting star that seemed to begin over the area that I grew up in and shoot across the LA basin and land in the mountains behind LA. And I could hear Dylan's voice, and he was big. He was 6'3" and 230 pounds. And I could hear his voice, Mom, Mom. It's like we always talked about. I'm home. I'm with God. And that's what I heard. And it was as if that shooting star went whoosh. Like I heard it. I saw it. The sound of it made me look up in the sky. And like LA is super bright. I grew up here. I've never seen a shooting star in the city. I've seen it in the mountains, but this was something, and I heard it out of my right ear. And so when he speaks with me, it's mostly out of the right side. But again, like you can imagine, you're just completely in shock, trying to process he was here yesterday, he's gone. And then the whole journey of, well, what is eternal life? What is this human existence that we all have? And by the way, his best friend was from Delhi. His best friend was Indian, and thank goodness we got to go to India together. So we had really incredible experiences. We wanted to see Mount Everest. So he was a ski racer, and from the time he was little, we lived in Germany, and we explored the high peaks together. And so one of our goals was to climb to base camp. And at that point in time, he wasn't old enough when we went to India, and we took a little plane excursion, and they said, I don't know, the chance of you seeing it is not great. It's been very overcast. But there it was, Mount Everest in all its glory. So the two of us got to have that experience together. And then sometime later, when I returned to India, I was flying from Delhi to Leh. And there's this round rainbow that appears in the sky that has his face in the middle of it. And before I went on this trip, so after he passed, it's just like you try to figure out some sense of your life, who you are, what you're here for, why did this happen, why me, why him. And I went on a healing journey to India the year after, and I was up in that area again, and flying from Delhi to Leh, this round rainbow appeared in the sky with his face in the middle. And I had been at a sound healing training right before that, and I did a private session with one of the practitioners, and I just said to her, I'm really nervous to go to India by myself. It's a retreat called Heart Songs in the Himalayas with Kevin James, who's a beautiful kirtan singer from Australia. But I said to her, I'm scared. I just feel so vulnerable. And she said, no, you got your ticket, you've got your place, you know that you're supposed to go. And what she didn't tell me is that Dylan was present in the room, and he said to her, I'm going to give my mom an unmistakable sign. And so when I saw that, and everyone in the plane was taking pictures because you saw this round rainbow and you saw the shadow of the plane inside it. But when I got out in Leh and I looked at the picture, it was Dylan's face. And it was just like, I didn't know what to do with that. And when I did get home and I shared it with her, she told me the story. She said, oh yeah, he was present that day in the session. And he said, I'm going to give my mom an unmistakable sign. So this connection for me, like when you reached out, this connection of India, which has been very sacred to me and to my son, and the fact that we got to experience it together and had really a magical journey, and then that I was able to go 2 times after that and experience really profound things there in India, was just, these are gifts. And so I learned in the grief that if I ran away from it, it would just, like, if I ran away from it, I couldn't find my son. But if I had the courage to land in the grief and feel it and breathe it and keen it out and groan it out and scream it and cry, that he was present with me all the time. So, and there were these moments again, like of this fear, like if it was like, no, it's just too much. And then I couldn't find him. I panicked, like, where are you, son? And then there was silence. So it was learning this dance of, how do we land in our heart? How do we land in excruciating emotional pain? Like, there's no words when you've lost a child, there's no words. How do you land in that? Not be afraid of it, and breathe it and feel it and allow it to transform. And I mean, there's so much to say to you, but like after that night, he would appear and so many beautiful signs came. But one day I'm sitting in the kitchen and he goes, Mom, you gotta call the bowl dudes. We're gonna do sound healing. And I'm like, son, leave me alone. I'm grieving you. Like we had this humorous relationship again. He was big and he was funny. And it was like, please leave me alone. I'm grieving you. And it was like 3 days in a row. Mom, call the bowl dudes. We're going to do sound healing. And I'm like, no, leave me alone. And finally on the third day I did. And I called the bowl company, and then I ordered 11 bowls. And interesting, those bowls that I chose, I based them solely on the alchemy. So as I said, he had loved that citrine bowl. So I chose celestite. That'll connect me to the heavenly realms. I chose rose quartz for the heart. I chose ruby for quantum and atomic transformation. I chose charcoal to help me release the grief. And then when the bowls came, I chose selenite, which is grounded white light. And that's the first bowl that I used. And as I started playing, and you'll appreciate this, as I started playing the bowl, I felt this misty white presence in the room. So I could feel him and see his presence in the room. And then he guided me. I started playing that bowl, and it was screeching. It was like nails on a chalkboard. And I'm like, what am I doing wrong? Like, the bowls are not that hard to play. You just tap them and you swirl them, but it was screeching. What I didn't understand is the quartz was amplifying my grief. So it was reflecting in its sound the intensity of my own grief. I didn't understand that in that moment. And he guided me through about 50 minutes of just the one bowl. And interestingly enough, the one bowl was the note of G sharp. And G sharp is the zeal point chakra. So I don't know how you feel that, but it's like, that's the connection to the divine. That's the male slot to God. That's the note it was, selenite. So I played like 50 minutes, and I cried and groaned and made sounds that I couldn't make in a talk therapy. I couldn't talk those sounds. But with that selenite bowl holding me, suddenly sound was coming out, and it was a free flow. And then I got up after 50 minutes and I went to wash my face in the bathroom, and I saw for the first time there was light in my eyes. I mean, I have goosebumps and it was just like, there's something happening here that this kid has guided me to, and I'm not alone in it. And it's something I need to have the courage to follow through, because I just wanted to stay in my bed. You know, you don't want to interact with life at all. And you can't figure out, how can life possibly go on? Nothing as you knew it will ever be the same. And so when I saw that light in my eyes, it was like, okay, joy is the opposite of grief. And if I have the capacity to feel the grief and not fear it and not run away from it, I can experience also joy like I've never known. Now, of course, as a grieving parent, that doesn't make sense, but it started to make sense. So essentially, that was a very long-winded first answer to your question, but that's what happened on my journey, and that took me into the bowls, and the communication with my son continues, and it's this beautiful, sacred partnership that I wouldn't have dreamed. And I came to understand we had a soul contract. And I'll still make a joke with him, and I'll just say, I don't remember signing any soul contract with you that you were going first. And when I see you again, we're going to have a talk about that. And I can feel him laughing. I laugh. And it's just like, Jeralyn, this is your destiny. And you just think like it happens to other people, but not you. But no, Jeralyn, this was your destiny. And I only had the one child. I was pregnant numerous times, but they didn't hold. It was him, so I recognize now, it's 10 years now, and I recognize that there's a path, and that pathway connecting heaven and earth, the celestial realm and the earthly realm, for me is a path. There's a bridge that's made through music. And somehow as a young singer, I think I sensed the power of music, but it wasn't till my son passed that this whole thing became like, oh, and it's like, and get it, Mom, you're going to do sound healing. No. And the first thing he had me do is he had me do a summit, and he told me who to invite. And one of the first guests was Deva Premal and Miten, who are beautiful kirtan singers. And I didn't know them. I wrote them cold on their website, and I got an answer back and said, yes, we'd like to be a part of it. And boom, 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 one after another, people joined the summit. And I'm like, son, I'm not an interviewer and I'm not a sound healer. I'm a singer. And it's like, oh, Mom, get ready for your new role. So it's been just a journey of honesty, of I think of brutal, authenticity, and not, for many people, when a child dies, it's like it's the elephant in the room. So at the university I was teaching at the time, and none of my colleagues said a word to me. And finally I asked an administrator, do you know what happened? Do you know that I lost my son? And he couldn't look me in the eyes. He was like, yes, we do. And I said, then why hasn't anyone said anything? And he said, because we don't know what to say. So it's like, okay, I'm navigating this path of excruciating pain, and then it's an elephant in the room. Nobody's going to acknowledge it. So then you feel shame and you feel like, what's wrong with me? And it's like, son, like, what's happening? So then I started to work with cancer patients. I just had the deep insight that if I didn't do something to help someone else, I was never going to get out of my bed. That, like, for me, life was over. It was done. It was done. And I made that call to cancer support community and asked if I could volunteer doing crystal singing bowls, sound baths. Now, granted, at the time, I had never really done a sound bath. I had played the bowls in Germany and used them with my students, but like really a sound bath for the public, I had never done that. And so it was like, yes, they said, we've had gong baths, but we've never experienced the crystal bowls. And they are relatively new. They've only been around since the year 2000. We can talk about that if you want, but it was like, okay. So I wrote a script. I was like, okay, I'm going to have a script for my meditation because I'm not a meditation leader either, and there it was. And there I was in front of 25 cancer patients. And the first event was magic. There was so much love present in the room. And all I needed to say was, I'm also here in grief. I've lost my 19-year-old child. Nothing else was important. They understood what it meant to be in a really serious situation, whether it was family members of the cancer patient or the cancer patient themselves going through chemo. It was like, oh my gosh, Jeralyn, I found a group that I can be myself, and the elephant in the room is the elephant's here and everyone's acknowledging it, right? So it was like, this is how healing happens. We're authentic and we talk about it and we share soulful music. And people can be real. And it was like that shifted everything for me. That gave me a safe space to really honor my grief in community and then to be of service to others with my musician skills. And then the skills that I was learning to build circuitry as just simply saying yes. So how do we say yes to our destiny when you go, I don't want that destiny. I didn't plan it. It's not my life. And life goes, well, yes, it is. So I think there was something in me, and the love with my son, we were always so close from the moment he was born. Like, I remember when he was born and I first looked at his eyes and looked into his eyes, and I know that babies can't focus, but I looked in his eyes and I heard him, oh, Mom, that's what you look like this time around? And I could feel myself going, son, that's who you are this time around? And we had this kind of cosmic chuckle. And I'll never forget that moment of just connecting soul to soul and going, I've known you for an eternity. Okay, we're doing this one together. But I never dreamed that he would not live beyond age 19. And yet here's this life. I get to talk to you and share, I think things that are really profound, because everybody's going to go through some kind of grief in their lives. And there's no handbook for that. What do we do? And for me, and what I'm here to share with you and your audience, is that music is sacred, and music with intention is a medicine.
So true. And music connects everyone. It doesn't matter where you're from, and it goes beyond the language. And even my son used to create music, and we have love for music running in our family. And when you shared about your son being a baby, even my son could focus and look in the eyes on the day one. And I clearly remember that and I am getting goosebumps as you're sharing these experiences, because even my son and I have a very he has a very great sense of humor, and he also guides me from the other side. And I have been through this journey of extreme intense grief, and because of people around, at times you have this feeling, like you said, that nobody wants to talk about it, and there is guilt and shame, and whether you were good enough as a mother, and why did this thing happen. And at the same time, you have this immense love. And I believe that my son taught me unconditional love, that purest unconditional love that comes when you become a mother. Then you realize that love, and that connection is there. So you have kind of this grief that is there, that is pulling you in the dense vibration, and then that love which is like a very high vibrational connection. And you have to kind of balance, like you said, there was a dance that you have to process the grief. There is no shortcut. You have to sit with it and go through it, and then come out, and then connect with your son, as in the loved one who's crossed over. So how was that journey for you? Can you tell us, like, how did he start connecting? Like you said, that rainbow, and the his face you saw, and that was so beautiful. I had goosebumps. And how does he connect with you now? Like, does he give you, like, you hear him, you see him, or what kind of guidance does he give you?
Gosh, I wrote this book, Sacred Vibrations, and in the book, so for example, on the cover, I decided to put this is a sound made visible. It's the image of a tiny F bowl in using a cymoscope. So a cymoscope is an instrument that you can see the visualization of sound, and so that cymoscope image has 22 of these little antinodes. And Dylan was born in Germany at 2222. And then that bowl is an F note bowl, so it's the heart. But the octave of the F bowl is up here. It's not octave 4, it's octave 5. So it's a very high F bowl that made the 22 antinode images. And I just thought that's it. That's like that's our relationship. It is sound. It's indicating, okay, he was born at 2222, and it's the heart, like what you were saying, you know. So, I mean, there's just been so many signs along the way. This is another sign. So, this is the teacher that he guided me to study with. This is Dr. Sue Mortar. So
Yeah,
she's holding this
Dr. Sumoto.
picture.
Yes,
Yeah. Yeah, and she really became my mentor. And there you see they're at the top of Huayna Picchu in Machu Picchu, and there's that beam of light. And I mean, I was too in grief to go up on that hike. I was on the other side of the valley. It just, I wanted to do it, but there was no way. I had collapsed the night before and just wept. And so there was just no way to make the strenuous hike. But she was kind enough. I had given her his picture, and it was a funny story because he passed March 27th, so we just had the 10th anniversary. And in May, I got a message, Mom, we're going to Machu Picchu. And I'm like, okay. And I told you about Mount Everest. So the high places in the world were things that we absolutely loved. Like when he was a ski racer and skiing, we went up to Chamonix, and we went in France to a very on Mount Chamonix, and we actually hiked and then skied down this glacier. And it was like he was 10 years old, and I'm like Jeralyn, what are you doing? Your kid is 10 years old. I mean, this is not Disneyland. This is like the real deal. But we had so much fun. So kind of adventures and nature and high peaks were really part of our life together. So he said, Mom, we're going to Machu Picchu. And I said, okay, who are we going with? And I opened the computer and I Googled spiritual journeys to Machu Picchu, and Dr. Sue Morter came up. I didn't know her. I didn't know her work. And I said to my son, I think we're supposed to go with the shaman. And he was like, no, 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 Mom. And I kept Googling shamans. And she told me later when I met her, she said, that's so funny, because she said, people have always called me the shaman in the business suit.
Wow.
You know, so, I mean, it was really funny, but, you know, he said, that's who we're going with. And then, you know, everything aligned in my favor, and that miracle happened at the top. And she was trying to teach me about everything is energy. We are made of energy. We are made of sound, vibration, and light. And that sound, vibration, and light, it's creation. It gets compressed and compressed and compressed and compressed, and it becomes human form. That's at our essence who we are. And, you know, she's teaching these things on the journey awake to Machu Picchu. And I'm listening, and then I see that photo. And they also took a video. And in the video, you see the beam of light come in, and it's wobbly at first, and then you see it land on his throat. And it's like, you can't make this up. And it's like, okay, son, you are doing everything to get me out of grief. Because I mean, you know, sometimes I look at Dr. Sue and say, how can you possibly say that everything that happens in our life is for our good? How can Dylan's death be for my good? This is, I can't follow you on this. I feel like I'm a very deeply spiritual person. I always have been, but I can't follow you. How can death of a child be good? You know, and as this journey progressed, and, you know, as I said earlier, like I would be able to stay in the light and stay, as you said, like in this higher vibrational frequency, I could meet him. Like, I mean, there's just all kinds of just funny things and things that, again, you can't make up. Like, there was one night that I was tossing and turning, I fell asleep, and then I feel him, and I see him, and he's talking to me, and I smell him. I smell his favorite cologne. I can actually feel him hugging me, like he's warm. And I'm like, oh my God. And when I woke up in the morning, I ran to his bedroom, and it was like I collapsed on his bed, and I just went, Jeralyn, like, what were you thinking? But it was so real. Smelled him, saw him, felt him, everything. And it was like, that was a visitation. And I didn't know, but I dragged myself back to my room, and I plopped myself down in a chair. And as I looked down at my nightgown, because I was, you know, I jumped out of bed, I was in my nightgown, there was a tiny white feather underneath the threads of my nightgown. And I don't have anything with down feathers because I'm very allergic. How the heck did that tiny white feather, and it was embedded under my nightgown thread. So it was like he was telling me, Mom, I'm here. And it was just like, I mean, there's been so many things where I've just been absolutely blown away. Like, life is so much beyond what we know and what we see. And how do you define spirit? Like, how do you define what I'm sharing with you? And I remember hearing, you know, it was Beethoven. It was before I had Dylan, but I remember hearing a concert of Herbert von Karajan, who was a very, very famous conductor, when I was living in Berlin at the time. And Berlin was a divided city, so it was still when there was East and West Germany. And Karajan came out on the stage of the Berlin Philharmonic, and you could hear a pin drop. And here was a maestro that was just so revered. And they were playing Beethoven Missa Solemnis, 4 soloists, so kind of what I did later, the Ninth Symphony of Beethoven, but a different piece. And I just remember feeling like there are no words for this. Music takes us to the place of the ineffable. And Dylan's communications, the possibilities for all of us to have what you're describing, what your life is so richly infused with, the communications with your beautiful son. Like, how do we put that in words? It is ineffable. It is sublime. It is when you hear the most beautiful music. You know, people have said, I don't know, must know who Anita Moorjani is. She has written a book, Dying to Be Me. She's from India, and she had a near-death experience.
Yeah,
and
Anita Moorjani, yes.
yeah, and Anita told me when I used to play for her, and she told me when she first heard me play the bowl, she said, those are the sounds of heaven. Those are the sounds I heard when I had my near-death experience. And some of the cancer patients, one of the most moving stories from the cancer patients was a lady who had been a traditional meditator for 28 years, and she had never meditated with sound. So she had never done like a sound bath meditation. And afterwards, she had stage 4 liver cancer. And she said to me, Jeralyn, I don't know how to put this in words. She said, I've been a traditional meditator 28 years. I've always meditated in this pristine silence. But she said, after I heard your voice and the bowls, she said, I'm no longer afraid of death because now I've heard the sounds of heaven. So it's like, how can I, as a musician, first a Broadway singer and then a classical musician, how can I explain to you, was it Beethoven? Was it Mozart? Was it whatever music you love? Was it Indian raga? Was it chant? Was it jazz? Was it, pop music? What is it that does it for you? What is it that helps us come to this place of stillness where we just know? For me, that's what I'm passionate about exploring now, is how is music a medicine, and especially a medicine, in these times. Like, if I imagine my son being alive now, when there's so much, he didn't go through COVID, he didn't go through just the political turmoil that we're experiencing worldwide. It's like, it was the timing, and it was meant to build this bridge for me to help share how is music a medicine for all of us. And there's just been so many beautiful, there was one situation where a dear friend was in the hospital. She was pregnant, and something was not right with the baby, and she was 6 months, and I asked her, could I bring some of the bowls and can I play for you and the baby? And oh, yes. And so I went to the hospital, and I especially played a ruby bowl. It was a ruby bowl at the heart, an F note. And I just felt I needed to be there, but I felt it wasn't good. It just felt like, I don't know. And then when I was driving home, I stopped at a stop sign near my house, and it was the house that Dylan and I had lived in together. And I just lost it. I started yelling at him. Why can't you be here? Everybody loved you. Why can't you be here? I lost it. I really lost it. Thank goodness I was at a stop sign. My radio popped on, and on the screen, it said Dylan, source unknown. And then it starts playing the song, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world, by Louis Armstrong. And I'm like, wait, what? What just happened? I mean, again, it's like there was no making that up. I took my cell phone, I took a picture, I pulled over and stopped the car, and I was just shaking. It was like, you're talking to me. If you could answer my crying at you and my yelling at you, if you could answer me, you answered me. You answered me, and you said, Mom, think to yourself, what a wonderful world. It was just, and his name was on the screen. Source unknown. It was just, that was really a wild one. And it just makes you think, like, we can't be victims. We can't be victims of our circumstance, but it's so easy to go, why me, God? Why? And I learned very quickly, I guess you learn what you're made of, and you learn the core of who you are, because how you deal with grief and loss and illness and the things that we have to go through, as you know so well, how we deal with them defines who we are and who we become. And I knew another thing, like I was in talk therapy and I was trying to talk through the grief, but as my singing teacher had told me years earlier, don't listen to yourself. Nothing vibrates there. Your body is what's vibrating. Your body is the instrument, right? And in the talk therapy, it put a band-aid on it, but it didn't get to the core feelings. Like you could talk and talk and talk and talk, but it didn't change the fact. And it was like, okay, Jeralyn, how are you you can't change the fact, but how are you gonna change the feelings in your body that are just like, they're just trapped in there. They're just like, I'm just dying of grief. And I think just the understanding that there really is something so much bigger than us. And that communication that's possible for everybody. And if we try to figure it out with our thinking minds, we can't really. It's a gift. Like I said earlier, like when I was so in despair, I couldn't find him, and that made me panic more. And the more that I've opened the channel, like how you talk about grounding down to the earth, rooting at your root chakra, opening to the light, being present in this central channel, opening to the light that we are. Like the more I could do that and just let the grief flow and let it have its own ebb and tide, the more my son was just there doing really funny things. I mean, just funny things, things that made me go, oh, wow. There was one situation I was singing a concert. So then I started to make music. Finally, like it took me 2 years. I couldn't sing, and I couldn't open my voice really for almost 2 years. And then it was like mom. And I had the courage to do the first album. And it's fun because it's called Forever Love. And I'm now 10 years later doing a second album with the same arranger who went through that with me. Because there were times I'd had to leave the recording studio and just weep. I couldn't get the song out of my voice. And now we're taking famous classical melodies and infusing singing bowls and instruments. So there won't be words, there'll be more just vocalises like that with really traditional classical melodies.
Ah, so beautiful. Yeah, I can resonate on so many levels. It's beautiful.
I think the signs, I guess, just the signs of, yeah, mom, I'm here, and mom, I'm guiding, and mom, I'm a part of your life. And, one thing led to the next, and one thing led to the next, and then the next. And he was always there. Mom, we're doing sound healing, and then we're doing the summit, and then we did a second summit. And, oh, I know what I was going to tell you. I was singing a song from that album, and at this concert in Canada with Greg Braden, Dr. Joe Dispenza, Dr. Bruce Lipton, and they had hired me to do, celestial music with the bowls and my voice. So I did this beautiful concert, and after the concert was over, there was a long lineup of people that wanted to share. And this was one of the first concerts I had done with that vulnerable music from the album, playing the bowls, and actually being in the public eye again. And he was a young man in his late 20s, a farmer in Canada. And he said to me, I need to tell you, your son came to me during the concert, and I could feel his hand. He was scratching my cheek. He was scratching my cheek, and he said, I'd been thinking about leaving the planet. He just said, life's been really hard for me. And your son said to me, don't you dare do that. It's not your time. It is not your time. And he said, I could feel the physicalness of this being just telling me, like, shape up, young man. And, I don't know, that just touched me. It just touched me so much. Like, and there's all different kinds of communications of people sharing, like that Dylan communicates with them, and helps them in a moment where they've lost sight of purpose or lost sight of light. So I don't know. I mean, this journey it never ceases to amaze me. Of course I miss him. And just having the 10th anniversary, like, of course I miss him. But life became something else. And we have to learn to accept our destiny. And the more we fight it, it's just awful. I had a moment where after the visitation that I told you about, when I went back upstairs and then I saw that little white feather in my nightgown, and there'd be things like that would just really uplift me and give me hope. And then there'd be things where I'd just go, I can't go on. And I had a moment where I just thought, you know what? I'm going to go in the kitchen and I'm going to take a knife and I'm going to just put it in my heart, because I can't bear the pain in my heart. It's like you can't put it in words. And instead of doing that, I called my mother and I was just weeping. And I said, Mom, and she knew exactly where I was. She was very close to Dylan too. And she just said to me, if you take your life, I'm going to kill you first. And I just was like, it was so sobering. And my mom, she's 5'3" and 125 pounds. She's very small. But she got it. She knew how in despair I was and how much I had sunk into the grief and hopelessness. And it was just like, Mom, there's no reason to go on. And she was just like, if you kill yourself, if you think about that, I'm going to kill you first if you take your life. And that sobered me. And I never fell to that level of depth since that moment, because it really was like the deepest kind of despair. And I never went there again. She sobered me. I mean, it was really like, she sobered me to the point that it was like, okay, there really is something much more beyond what we can see. And my job is to say yes to it and to be present and to be courageous and to know that our son's passings have a bigger purpose. You wrote a book. You're doing this beautiful work that you're doing. Like, you probably wouldn't have done it if your beloved boy hadn't passed. I would not be here having this conversation with you. So it's like, can we be big enough to accept, like Dr. Sue would say to me, big beings take on big projects. And it's like, no. I didn't ask for that. I'm not a big being, and it's like, Jeralyn, get it. Big beings take on big projects, and you need to be able to stand in courage in the immensity of these feelings.
Yeah. So beautiful. How can people connect with you?
They can find, oh, sorry, I got all choked up. They can find me at crystalcadence.com. That's our main website, or JeralynGlass.com.
Yeah.
They can find us on social media, Crystal Cadence LA. We have lots of music on all the platforms of music, Apple Music, Spotify, on our website. We have a YouTube channel, Crystal Cadence, that has lots of free meditation. So if you want to explore what I've shared and talked about, please go to the YouTube channel and subscribe. I have this beautiful book, if you are interested in reading or listening to the audio, Sacred Vibrations, and there's a wonderful 20-minute film in there that you'll see all the miracles that I talked about in color. We made a beautiful film. And then there's an app that we've created called Source, that has just a world to explore of science, the healing power of music, body awake yoga. So it's what you asked for. It's an app, Source Be Inspired, about wholeness, about holistic wellness.
We'll give all the links in the video description.
Yeah, we have a members portal if people would like to meet regularly with me. We meet once a month. We have a wonderful, vibrant community. So yeah, and join our mailing list. You'll get 2 free downloads of music, and then you'll stay in touch with everything we're doing. So thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. It's been really an absolute pleasure and honor having you over here. And you're doing such amazing work. And you're helping so many thousands and thousands. And it's from the heart. I can feel that love. I can feel that light. So thank you. Thank you for doing what you're doing. Thank you for being here.
Same to you. And thank you for reaching out to me, and to all your audience. Thank you for listening. And I hope that it brings you inspiration and joy and opens you perhaps to a deeper purpose than what you might have thought. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching and listening in wherever you are in the world. As Ramdas says, that we all are just walking each other home. So thank you for co-creating the new earth along with me and our guests. And if you resonate with me, do subscribe to my channel and do let us know how you find our episodes. Thank you so much. Lots of love.